You're listening to Puma Podcast.
Hi, I'm Franco Luna Puma Podcast, and you're listening to Teka Teka News. In this episode,
most countries in Asia started to adopt a population management cum family planning program in 1970. And the Philippines was among the first to do it in that year. So President Marcos acceded to stopping the family planning program to accommodate the Roman Catholic hierarchy for political expediency. Thus, with a failed family planning program, declining fertility, a necessary condition for demographic transition towards faster economic growth, higher employment, and poverty reduction could not be achieved. Such was the huge missed opportunity.
let's talk about the ways we could have avoided overpopulation. Imagine a small village nestled amidst rolling hills and verdant fields. The villagers live simply, relying on the land for their sustenance and their livelihoods. As the years pass, families grow and the village expands. More people mean more hands to till the land, more mouths to feed, and more minds to contribute to the village's progress. We are that village. In the 1960s, concerns about the rapid population expansion and its potential impact on the country's resources and socioeconomic development began to emerge. And of course, the Catholic Church's opposition to measures like artificial contraception stems from its belief that these methods violate natural law and go against God's plan for procreation.
Undoubtedly, the Philippine situation has posed a huge challenge to its economy and society at large. The elephant in the room. There has hardly been a serious social debate, or the issue has just been sidestepped or swept under the rug for political expediency. The imposition of martial law in 1972 facilitated the implementation of the government's population program, but adamant opposition, as I already mentioned, of the Roman Catholic hierarchy and conservative groups prevailed, which Marcos had to accommodate.
That was former NEDA Secretary Ernesto Pernia. He served under the Duterte administration. The Church's influence has been evident in the country's political landscape, where debates over family planning measures have often been contentious. The Church's opposition to the RH law was a major obstacle to its passage, and the law's implementation has continued to face challenges. The thing is, rapid population growth, which may be perceived as a source of strength and vitality, can pose significant challenges to a nation's economic development. It's like trying to pour a vast amount of water into a small cup. The water will inevitably overflow, creating chaos and instability. When a population grows too quickly, it puts a strain on the available resources and infrastructure. The once fertile land struggles to support the growing demand for food, leading to malnutrition and food shortages. The education system becomes overburdened, unable to provide quality education to all the children. Healthcare facilities become stretched thin, struggling to meet the rising demand for medical services.
In the Philippines, consumptive prevalence rate seems stuck at around 54%, of which modern family planning is only 42%. Whereas Thailand, even Bangladesh now, Malaysia and Vietnam, they are at 70% modern family planning, not traditional. Incidentally, high fertility and poverty typically leads to a vicious circle that can be self-perpetuating. Hence, it's crucial to reach the poor with modern family planning, education and health services that can enable them to move out of poverty.
It's like a ship laden with too much cargo, and it will sink if not properly balanced. A country with a rapidly growing population needs to navigate a delicate balance between population growth and economic development. And the lack of balance we see today comes from the lack of something economists call demographic transition.
Unlike most of its Southeast Asia and East Asian neighbors, the Philippines failed to undergo timely demographic transition, with its family planning program discontinued in the latter part of 1970s, thereby keeping fertility and population growth rates high, hence the outlier in the region's demographic transition.
Demographic transition is the term used to describe this gradual shift in a country's population structure, from high fertility and high mortality rates to low fertility and low mortality rates. Demographic transition typically unfolds in stages. The first stage sees high fertility and high mortality, resulting in a young population. In stage 2, a country shifts to declining mortality rates while fertility remains high, leading to rapid population growth. Then fertility declines, slowing population growth and increasing the proportion of working age adults. The Philippines is in the second stage of demographic transition, with high fertility and declining mortality rates. This means that the population is growing rapidly, with a large proportion of young dependents.
The country had a high youth dependency, and the major challenge here is much of the scarce resources had to be spent on increased needs for primary health care, nutrition, education, and related services for the young dependent population.
Sa dulo nito, meron ng low fertility and low mortality rates, resulting in a stable population with a larger proportion of older adults.
The growing number of young adults, particularly those aged 15 to 24, during the second phase of the transition can be productive provided the labor market is sufficiently flexible and expansive given the right government policies, such as those conducive to women's education.
The point is, bringing total fertility rate down to replacement fertility is critical as it facilitates higher employment, economic growth, and inclusivity. Kaso lang, malayo pa tayo dito. We're pausing for a quick break here. When we return, we'll tell you why.
The Philippines' partnership in physical infrastructure is talked about more often and resonates more widely in policy or social discourse than human and social infrastructures. And the budget of allocation for physical infrastructure often visibly dwarfs those for human and social infrastructure. Yet, in terms of priority of nature and of order, priority of order, human capital and social infrastructure should take precedence.
Again, that was former NEDA Secretary Ernesto Pernia. Why are we looking at this? Well, former Health Secretary Galvez Stan says this is what happens in the long term when more and more children are born into poverty.
Stunting means chronic malnutrition, prolonged malnutrition. Now, when you're stunted at 6 or stunted at 12, you're stunted forever. 30% of our people right now, even adults, are already rather experiencing the stunted development.
And that can have serious effects on an economy in the long term. That points to the need for infrastructure, and we're not just talking about train lines and bridges. Because the key is building on the potential of a still growing population while mitigating its negative impacts. That means investing in education and healthcare to empower Filipinos to contribute to the economy and make informed decisions about family planning.
Do you know that more than 40% of all barangays in the Philippines do not have a decent barangay health station? We're talking universal health care, but if at least that's counting around 24,000 barangays not having any single barangay health station. And what more, no human resource infrastructure. You may feel that as if we have so many hospitals.
The Philippines' future demographic trajectory will depend on its ability to balance economic development, environmental sustainability, and the well-being of its growing population. And that might need a more holistic approach going forward. Here's former NEDA Secretary Ernesto Pernia again.
The government must walk the necessary strategy for sustained economic development, which is to put greatest emphasis on health and education rather than on physical infrastructure. This is constructive critique of what the current administration is practicing in terms of human, social, and physical infrastructure, which is needed, but it's not being talked about.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. Again, I'm Franco Luna. This episode was edited by Pidoy Blanco. Our Teka Teka News executive producer is Jill Cado, and our senior editor is Veronica Uy. If you found this episode useful, share it with a friend. Help Teka Teka News reach more people and keep the show going. Thanks for listening.